want to keep strengthening. I think realistically we should be pushing for a European spot again.
Hi there, welcome back to another episode of the Premier League Predictor. Today we're going to talk about Leicester City. Now it's fair to say I think their fans were hoping for a better season in the league last year, but they did have a fantastic European adventure, going all the way to the semi-finals, unfortunately being beaten by Jose Mourinho's Roma at the time. But we're going to relive last season as well as talk about the upcoming season with a Leicester City fan, a man that I know quite well through his Polish football expertise, but also he's part of the fosseway.net as well. So we welcome onto the show Ryan Hubbard. But before I check in with Ryan, make sure you subscribe to our channel, give it a like, and also give us your comments as we go along on this particular episode. And also, I'll just add into the cards right now, if you haven't already done so, please have a look at our other episodes. I've done a host of other clubs talking to their fans about the upcoming season as well. But Ryan, absolute pleasure to have you on to discuss, more importantly, your beloved Leicester City. And let's talk about last season, because although I kind of gave it away in the intro itself, obviously, I think you look back and say it was quite a successful season. But I don't know if that's the feeling with Leicester City fans. So let's get your thoughts on this.
It's been one of those things since we won the league, and we always hark back to it. 6 or 7 years ago, if you'd have told us that we'd have finished 8th in the Premier League and got to the semi-final of the European competition, we would have, of course, taken that any day of the week. But yeah, it does feel like a bit of a disappointment. I think those European nights in particular, I know it's only the Conference League, but for a club as the size of Leicester, which historically isn't a huge club, those sort of things are fantastic, and we would have loved to have another season in the Conference League again, going to places all over Europe that we'd never been to before. So the fact that we've missed out on things like that is quite a disappointment. Obviously losing in the way that we did in the semi-final, which I don't think it was deserved. I think we had a good shot. I think we had chances in that semi-final against Roma. And of course, being able to be the first name on that trophy would have been amazing. Again, I say it as any club, but, especially for a club the size of Leicester. It is massively disappointing that we didn't really achieve anything. I say achieve anything, Community Shield at the start of the season. It's a bit of silverware. We can't knock that, but it's not realistically. It's not an improvement on the previous years, and I think that's what hurts the most, really.
And what's the feeling with Brendan Rodgers? Because I've seen a lot of reports, and I don't know if it's more media outlets than it is necessarily Leicester City fans when it comes to kind of disgruntled opinions of the way Leicester played last season. But I think there was a lot of feeling around how maybe he's gone the course with Leicester City to an extent. I don't know if that's fair, to be fair, but being that you saw them quite regularly, I mean, what's your thoughts on the way it panned out last season?
It's a mixed bag, I would say. Opinions vary from, he is probably one of the best coaches we've had in recent years, to, why is he still at the club? I think one of our contributors on the Fosse Way, we had a pre-season friendly against I suppose they're our sister club over in Belgium, Udhevely Leuven, and saying, is it possible to sack a manager after a friendly performance? Wow. Because it was at times, I think we were 1-0 down after about 25 seconds. We went 2-0 down, and we eventually drew 3-3. But it's difficult. Obviously, you can't, and it was said in jest, you can't obviously judge it on friendly performances. And last season we had a hell of a lot of injuries, which contributed throughout the season. We were without Ndidi for massive parts of the season, Vardy for parts of the season, Barnes was out, Fofana was out for a good chunk of the season, Evans was out, and you reel off the list of injuries and you've got a pretty strong 11 there. But still, there were massive worries and over the performances. We cannot defend a corner to save our lives, and I think a lot of the chat on the forums and on social media is, what are they working on in training? Every week we seem to concede the same sort of goals from set pieces, from corners. They must be working on it in training, surely.
Yeah, exactly.
What are they doing? It's, I'm in the camp where I'm prepared to give him a bit of the benefit of the doubt at this point. Like I said, we did have a lot of injuries last season. We had a lot of games last season. We never really had a full strength squad available to us, and to still finish 8th, just outside of the European places, which we theoretically, another couple of results where we had poor performances, we could have been in 7th place and got back into the Conference League. I'm prepared to give it a bit more time, but yeah, there are a lot of doubts on his where he's going to take us from now.
And as you've rightly alluded to, obviously injuries played a part in last season. I think to a degree that kind of highlights maybe the reliance on certain players. I'm thinking the likes of Jamie Vardy. And I thought last season was maybe going to be the opportunity for the likes of Iheanacho to make more of a name. Certainly, I think there was promising signs towards the end of the previous season where they seemed to be getting a lot of form. But for whatever reason, it didn't kind of transpire last season. As you say, there's been a lot of other injuries like Ndidi, who he looks like he was going to be the kind of player, the key player for Leicester City. Unfortunately, that's a pre-season injury against Villarreal, if I remember rightly. Where
that was Fofana,
Fofana even, yeah. But yeah, there was a number of these kind of injuries that really put you guys back. So do you feel like potentially going forwards now that if these guys stay fit, you're going to be in a much stronger position going into the season ahead?
I think it's a possibility. As you said, I wouldn't say there's a reliance on certain players, because you look at as I mentioned, all those players, we rely on all of them.
Yeah,
we're without Ndidi for more than half the season. I think he got injured against I think it was against Legia in the Europa League right after we named the European squad, and we'd left Nampalys Mendy out of the European squad because we didn't have enough space in the squad. And then Ndidi got injured and we couldn't play Mendy, and then Ndidi got fit at when we could rejig the squad around. Ndidi was put back into the squad. We left Mendy out, and then Ndidi got injured again. So it's we were left at times with quite a threadbare squad, and when you're without all of those players in one go, it's not necessarily a reliance on those individual players. It's just you are down to your bare bones. So hopefully we will start the season in a better place injury wise. And there's still concerns because I think Ndidi has picked up another injury now. I don't know how serious that is at this point, but there are still concerns. But if we do have a full strength squad and without those extra European games, China, I'm hoping we should see a bit of a benefit of that. You did mention Iheanacho, players like Iheanacho, and he did, at the start of the season or the back end of the previous season, he was on fire. I think he scored the winner in the Community Shield as well, and it looked like brilliant. And we signed Patson Daka, who, to be fair to him, I'll give him again the benefit of the doubt. He's adjusting to the league. He at times has looked brilliant. So I think he scored 4 against Spartak Moscow in the Europa League, but he's not been given as much game time as perhaps a lot of fans think he should have done. And one of the big ones is Maddison. Maddison, if we've got Maddison on form, he's improving so much year on year, and he had a spell out at the start of the season injured as well. And when he came back into the side, he was on it straight away, and we looked a much better side with him in it. So I think the fact if we've got all of those players back together and playing, and we can get a good run of games, then I think we should be okay. We should be fine. We should be comfortably top half, pushing for European players.
Yeah, certainly. I think the other 2 names that spring to mind is Harvey Barnes, who was injured for parts of last season. And I think for maturity of the way he came across was Dewsbury Hall as well. He's obviously earned himself a new contract. And given the circumstances where he played a lot more football than probably he anticipated, he did quite well in the circumstances as well. So let's move on to your transfer wish list. Now, we did joke about this offline that it seems to be a lot of media speculation and necessarily kind of maybe wishful targets that Leicester City are going to get. But Brendan Rodgers has said he wants to get at least a minimum anywhere between 5 to 6 players. And you weren't too complimentary of the list that I gave you when we were talking about this offline. So just for the benefit of those viewing this right now, kind of the names linked are the likes of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Harry Winks, Maxwell Cornet from Burnley, James Ward-Prowse, which I'll be surprised if Southampton actually let him go, John McGinn, Ismail Sarr from Watford. Then we've got the likes of Ryan Kent from Rangers and Nicolas Pepe, to name more than a few. It's been rumoured also just today, as we record on the 19th of July, that the likes of Yannick Bednarek might be kind of coming in as well. But from your point of view, Ryan, where do you think Leicester City really needs to strengthen?
My big one, I don't know if it's we need to strengthen, but we need a bit more competency in attack, I think, is a big one. We've relied on Jamie Vardy for so long now that we saw without him last season. We really look like we're struggling there. And that's not to take anything away from Iheanacho, who can be a great player on his day. That's not to take anything away from Patson Daka, who I believe needs to probably show a lot more this season and show that he can be a replacement for Vardy. But we do look a bit lightweight up front. We also, defensively, we just look very weak. And I don't really understand why. And again, it could be partly to do with the injuries. It's partly to do with the recruitment. The signing of Yannick Vestergaard was not anywhere near as promising as everybody hoped. And being without Fofana as well, and being without Evans, we were very threadbare at the back. And with the potential of Chaglos Oyuncu, he's potentially moving on. That's one of the big rumours that has been talked about. That's probably an area where we need to look to strengthen as well. But I think one of the big things for Leicester is not to lose players. Players like Tielemans, who has been widely rumoured to be going elsewhere. And that's not to say his performances last season were fantastic or anything, because he was, on the whole, I think if you spoke to many Leicester fans, one of our lowest performers over the season. Whether it was tiredness, he played a lot of games. He played a lot of games for Leicester and for Belgium. He didn't really have much of a summer. Obviously playing through the Euros, stuff like that. It just seemed to never have a break in. I don't know if it's just the after effects of that, but it seemed to sort of lag and catch up with him. But to lose him, and if we did extend his contract, as has been rumoured, there's a lot of talk if he doesn't leave, he will sign a new contract at Leicester. So to have that sort of lack of speculation going on in the background after he signed a new contract, that might, things might start to get off his shoulders a little bit. And we might see more of Tielemans that we know, and definitely not losing players like Maddison, who I personally think he could go on to be one of the best Leicester players that we've ever seen. I personally think he is a shout for future captain of the team if he does stay. He seems to be a lot more grounded in recent years as well. He's recently had a kid, and he just seems a lot more down to earth, a lot more relaxed, a lot more mature. And we've seen it in his performances on the pitch as well. Since he's had the letdown from the England team, where he's all the issues he's had with Southgate, that sort of thing. His maturity is just exploded. And I think a big transfer window for us is keeping a hold of those important players, getting rid of some of the deadwood, and maybe adding one or two players in those key positions.
You mentioned the deadwood. Is there any particular players that you'd like to see moved on? Because I think the likes of Dennis Pratt has been linked with a move back to Serie A as well.
There are just a lot of players that don't seem to be. There doesn't seem to be a role for them at the club. Dennis Pratt's one of them, and I think Dennis Pratt is a fantastic player. When he has played for us, he's looked brilliant at times.
Yeah.
But if he's not going to play, let's move him on and let's get some cash for him and potentially be able to delve into the transfer market. There's players like Hamza Chowdhury, who again I think he's a fantastic player. He's sometimes you need that player with aggression and that fight, and when he has played, he looks good. But if he's not going to play, let's move him on. And it's a sad thing to say because he's a local boy.
Yeah.
He's from just down the road in Loughborough. So it's a sad one. But there's no point him sitting around warming the bench, or not even warming the bench. There's Boubakary Soumaré is another one who's been rumoured to go to Monaco. He looks a good player. He looks a very good player, but he's just not been where I suppose many fans expected him to be. So if he's not going to play, move him on. Nampalys Mendy potentially as well. Now we don't have those Europa League games. We haven't got the crammed fixture list. Is there any room for him in the squad? Only if there's injuries, really. So if not, let's move him on.
Yeah, I get the feeling, and this is not just from your point of view, but a lot of clubs are feeling like they need to move on players, but it doesn't seem like it's a buyer's market at the moment. There's not that money there. And I feel like this summer is going to kind of show us that actually the money isn't there right now. And it's going to take a lot of effort for any club to kind of move on their deadwood as we go along into September. But certainly it'd be very interesting when we come to the last few weeks of that window to see how many more transfers we actually do see as opposed to right now as we record right now. So, Ryan, I'm going to give you the really difficult task of trying to predict where you're going to end up. But let's just assume right now that the window is shut and it is as it currently stands. Where do you aspire Leicester City to finish at the end of this season?
I aspire is to finish in the top 7. That's the aim.
Yeah.
That's the aim. Realistically, I think we're probably going to be a top half side. I providing there's no injuries, no worries in that sense. I don't see us being in any sort of relegation battle. But there are a lot of other sides in the Premier League strengthening. So there is always that concern that if we don't get players in, there is the potential that we could start to fall down, and that's after the few years we've had. That's the last thing we want to see. We want to keep strengthening. I think realistically we should be pushing for a European spot again. Just
a quick word on your rivals. Obviously, Nottingham Forest are back in the Premier League. Obviously, will be a kind of fixture that I assume a lot of Leicester City fans are looking forward to as well from that point of view. What have you made of their business so far in this window?
They seem to have strengthened very well. It pains me to say it. They're coming up with a lot of impetus. They've got a lot of momentum after their playoff win. And, they're a newly promoted side. They need to stay in the Premier League. It's as simple as that for them. So they have to push the boat out. Whereas a side like Leicester, it's they don't have that requirement to just splash the cash. And there probably isn't as much cash spare to splash for a side like Leicester, who has, like I say, missed out on European spots. So it's good to see Forest as a Leicester fan, and saying this, it is good to see Forest back for the fact that we get a local derby again, because we have missed that sort of thing. I know they're not our main rivals, and it depends where you're from. In Leicester, whether Forest are Leicester's biggest rivals. For myself personally, where I'm based in Leicester, I'm close to Coventry, so we always saw Coventry as probably a more bigger rival. Whereas if you're from the north, it's Forest or Derby. So, but it's a local East Midlands derby, which we've not had in the league for I can't even remember how many years now, to be honest. So it's good to see that. But of course, obviously, I hope we beat them, and I wouldn't if they got relegated.
Well, viewers, hope you enjoyed that. Let us know your thoughts below. But many thanks to Ryan. But for now, we'll see you on the next episode.